Thank you. So, digitalization challenges and risks. We had a really nice presentation from our Austrian neighbors, and I believe the problems or the challenges are important for the relevance of all SAIs. And if we go to the challenges, it's how to choose your topic. I mean, because there are so many buzzwords in digitalization. You have blockchain, advanced analytics, AR, big data. It's really know how to focus. And data told us about their example. Should I mention it? Yeah. It's very interesting because now their public sector institution will use an algorithm how to develop job seekers in 3 groups. So the challenge for the SAI will be to audit this algorithm and if it's working properly. Then the other very important challenges about this topic were training of staff, because from experiences from all of our 3 groups that we had in our group, was that there is sort of a generation gap. You have young auditors and then you have a bit older auditors which have really experienced, sorry, and they have really a lot of knowledge, but they will have to train also. I mean, because if the pace will go as it goes for now, and I think we shouldn't forget what your general auditor, Jared Davis, told us yesterday about Bill Gates, that we shouldn't underestimate the changes in 10 years. All the sites will be should change. I mean, they should train people to be able to prepare to address these challenges. And solutions were like no short-termism, as we heard yesterday also. So no 2-hour webinar will solve this. You know, it's a continuous process. Auditors will have to take a lot of trainings, because it's not even like you have a certificate like, I don't know, CISA, and you can do IT audits. You will have to do much more because the digitalization will go on and on. Then very important is also collaboration of SAI. Maybe also like this one here at YES, because we exchange quite some knowledge, and a colleague from Slovakia also mentioned knowledge sharing platforms that Poland and Czech Republic have, so maybe we'll hear more of them today. And this would be it. Would you want something to add? No? Okay,
well,
thank you.
Perfectly timed, so thank you very much. Okay.
Yeah, thanks. We had a wonderful workshop presented to Test. Thanks. We had a wonderful workshop presented to us by the representatives of Belarusia, Christina and Artyom. Thanks. I need to localize them because I asked them to nod as long as I'm not telling something wrong. The State Control Committee of Belarus saw a major reform in 2017 affecting all the work. Just to give you some background, they're independent by constitution and they're reporting directly to the president. And then began what I had to get my head around. They have a much broader scope, for example, the Statutory Audit Institution of Germany. The SCC, State Control Committee, has a coordinating rule for all oversight action in Belarus. Actually, when they began their presentation, I thought it was some kind of financial police, and they have a role in fighting financial crime, money laundering, etc. And their audits encompass not only the public sector but also the private sector, even looking into adherence of safety regulations, etc., which was important for me to know, just to get everything else. In 2017, they saw a major reform to reduce audit burden as a whole on private entities, also on the public sector, to increase efficiency of audits. This included a move from inside controls, what we are all very good at, just going there and telling you, well, last year you did something wrong, just to prevention, which implied a shift of responsibilities towards the entity. So the head of entities is now directly responsible for adherence to all these, and the auditor comes there and well, helps them to adhere. It's not just like they're penalizing anymore, but just they're telling them, well, you could have done this or that better, and they're giving them opportunity to improve before they might penalize later on still, so they're still quite powerful. Yeah, well, this also implies what Joachim told us about a move from just these hindsight controls to performance audits. You're looking not only at one hospital where you go and just tell them what they could have done better. Maybe there are some safety or healthcare regulations you did not fully adhere to, and just penalize them. They go to several hospitals, maybe do some kind of benchmarking and telling them where they might improve, and just making a suggestion they should adhere to. And well, to me this also explains a step up in relevance, because it actually helps them to get better to they are audited. Yeah.
That's your time up. So again, another perfectly timed feedback.
Does it work?
Yes, on that's fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Hello, test. Okay, it works. So we also had a wonderful presentation of the representative of Poland, Agnieszka, or Aga, it's easier. Yeah, she's here. So please correct me if I say something wrong, or you can also help me for the question who's going to come, hopefully. So maybe you heard some years ago about the horse meat scandal, where basically horse meat was sold as beef meat because it was basically cheap. There were also other scandals, food scandals in... oh, do you do something?
Keep going.
It's okay. Such in Germany, as expired meat was sold. There are some economic fraud, but there are also ones who are a bit more dangerous for the health. And we see that actually now we have some social changes or also technological changes that allow the possibilities to fraud. For example, with the globalization, we see that now it's more difficult to track the food chain when more than 7 countries are involved. And also the technological change makes easier to fraud. So we see that fraud controls are necessary, and we also check that in our countries the controls that were not always effective. Why? Because the responsibilities are divided in different bodies. In Switzerland, for example, we have 26 different food control authorities. They have their own strategy, their own controls, because we're a federal system, so they are quite independent. But there are also some problems with duplications, or sometimes not enough resources. Some units have a lot of money to do that, others not, and yeah, it addresses some problems of equality, because the units are treating the producers but also the consumers in a different way. Yeah, that's the problem. Okay, yeah, I get it. Well, so we say some work of some essays in Poland, but also Estonia, Bulgaria, Albania, where they try to unify those food controls, because it can increase equality, but also the specialization of the people, and also to concentrate the scientific resources. So one of the conclusions was continuing on doing more audits in that field to increase the awareness of the policymakers, but also of the population. So if you haven't done in your country, so it's going to be the idea to bring, okay, let's control, evaluate the food control system. It also has to do with what Gareth Davis says yesterday about that public audits must address long-term priorities such as climate change or aging population, and the food is also very basic and a long-term problematic. And also, in a way to improve also the system that allows to control the food along the food chain. Yeah.
Okay, lovely, really well timed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, this is not in any way prearranged, so I will be very brief, sadly, because the was really pretty interesting. We had ample conversation on constitutional topics, actually, because the matter was not only the future of parliamentary audit in a technical sense, but in a broader understanding of the problem from the point of view of what is the constitutional position of the audit office vis-à-vis the parliament in the different models we have around Europe. And so how this intertwines with the problems that are related to the last few days and the last few years and times to come. So I personally learned very much. I learned a lot about the constitutional position of the audit office in Britain, which picks his legitimacy, so to speak, from being theoretically a part of the legislative, because its authority stems from the authority of Parliament, and so it is unimpeachable and so on because of its position towards Parliament. And this obviously gives way to a strict relationship between parliamentary commissions itself, which is very efficient because of the method which sees the reports being presented in select committees rather than in plenary sessions. And this is very different from a court model, which has its own independence, stemming from the fact that we are a part of the judiciary in Italy as well as in France. We had a very interesting exchange of ideas about that. And this shapes also our relation with the Parliament, because we obviously are linked to the Parliament, but we relate to the Parliament as an external entity. So, for example, we are called to participate in hearings by commissions, by committees, by parliamentary committees. We are called to perform some acts which involve Parliament, for example, the equalization judgment about the budget of the state, but it is an altogether different relation. And probably things are about to be messed up a bit because of what is going to happen in the next few years. But anyway, be it a legitimacy stemming from your own constitutional position, be it a legitimacy stemming from your link with the Legislative Assembly, we hope that the continuing relevance of our institution can be assured in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that feedback.
Unfortunately, I didn't find anyone to wrap up the workshop, so I am going to do it, but the group promised me that they would buy me a round after today. What we have been talking about is actually how we can enforce the position and the methodology of size, and doing this without directly engaging in quantitative measuring of government performance, because it is a tendency that we have, and not all quantitative approaches say anything about the mission that certain ministries or government officials set for themselves. So what we have tried is to engage in an imaginary joint audit across Europe, to think about if we want to make a list or a frame of criteria upon to judge the performance of executives like the police, for example, then what should be on that list, and how, and this is where we used the capability approach of Amartya Sen and Martha Nussbaum as an example. So we tried to think, what capabilities do executives need to be able to thrive, to be able to perform well or very well? With the idea behind it that we as auditors don't know what it's like to be a police officer, and we have to get that knowledge from them. So we have to ask what it is like to be an officer, and how do you perform your task well? In what conditions should you be to really thrive in your activities? So we try to make a list in different groups, and I have the list right here. So we came up with some capabilities, and again, this is just a hypothetical. No, I'll get it. So of course, this list it's not complete, or it's not eternal, but it's just a thought experiment, so we could maybe agree upon if we would join in an audit together. What should we investigate, or what should we do? So there's like the police officer. We focus on the police. How they should be able to master modern technology. They should be able to communicate, talk to all members of society. They should be able to communicate via modern technologies. They should have strategic use of their skills. They should have visibility in the public. Public shouldn't be afraid of them. They need proper educations about the law, about legislation, and they should be able to train themselves to keep up with knowledge and skills. They should be backed up by their government. They should be backed up by superiors, show their presence. They should have a decent working environment. They should have physical fitness. They should have mental fitness. So that's kind of a combined list that we made.
I think that's all we've got time for.
This working? Yeah. So in our workshop, we shared ideas and how we do audit topic choosing in all of our participant offices. And actually, we then had a challenge for all participants to create new audit topic choosing or audit planning system. And further ado, I would like to give mic to Adam.
So my group, the group I was in, came up with some ideas which was then voted as the best ideas. I don't think they are the best ideas, but they're some ideas. It's certainly not a comprehensive way of choosing audit topics, but some of the ideas were sharing, or for SAIs to share audit plans, so that we could learn good audit topics and ways of conducting the work and reporting, and also that might allow us to benchmark across different countries as well. And linked to that, we could split the audit plans into different sort of themes, so maybe global themes, regional themes, national themes, which might help to prioritise and determine when to do work. We thought that being responsive was really important in terms of choosing what audit topics to look at, and making sure that you build flexibility into the audit plan and your resource model, so that you can respond really quickly. So don't overplan and fill the plan completely. Allow some spare capacity to pick things up and deliver short reports. And linked to that then, also around how you then choose to report. So don't necessarily plan to do a really comprehensive report, which might take a year or longer to complete, but maybe bring out short, snappy reports, and maybe choose to present the findings in a different way, maybe on Twitter, or like we heard yesterday, and just think of different ways.
Would you look at that? Right on time again. Thank you so much, guys. That was
This one's working. All right. So the starting point of the audit was the audit, my God, of the workshop, because we're talking about influencers. So we all have these ideas of social media. Apparently, what we can do doesn't involve makeup lessons on YouTube. So to start getting our message across, the main starting point for us would be to define clearly our identity, what we are, what are our values, and simplify them, not the long, big mission statement we all have on our websites. Welsh accepted. So also to know that we need to adapt our message to the audience. So we need to have different channels of communication, different messages for different audience. So not a monolithic communication strategy, but something that really takes account of the variety of people who are trying to reach. Work on our content. People have to remember it, so it needs to be short, it needs to be bright. Infographics, we've thought about that for quite some time now. So short report that people can read easily with lots of things they can remember afterwards. Also, our relevance comes from the impact we can have. So we need to communicate more clearly on the impact our work is having on the bodies we are auditing, but also on society in general. And finally, we need to involve the public. So that can be public consultation. I have to say you're very lucky in Israel because apparently you don't have GDPR. So you can do this questionnaire to thousands of people. Not quite sure we can. And so public consultation, focus group to get people's actual feedback on how the topic impacts them. And so if you can, large-scale questionnaire. We also had some very original ideas that I would really like to bring back to the Court of Auditors. Podcast to present the findings. Of course, this 2 minutes video that we've already talked about. Meeting the public, so including at the bar, which I'm really going to bring that idea back, to get people to know we exist and what we do. And mascots. So
And that is time.
that's it.
Thank you so much.